Hey everyone, and welcome to the Aim High podcast. Today I am here with the brothers, Ashton and Christopher Levarek. Guys, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having us.
It's a pleasure.
Excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. We've been in the same group with the War Room. Do me a favor, tell everyone about yourself.
My name's Ashton Levarek. I was a prior PJ for the Air Force, 21 years. And in 2018, my brother and I partnered to get into real estate investing and never looked back, retired out of the military. And we've done, around 100 million in assets under management at some point. We sold some of that off over this past year. So it's been a eventful 4 years building this business, and it's been a lot of fun and exciting. And there's so much more to do. That's in a nutshell.
Christopher Levarek. I'm his younger brother by about 4 years. I went to college, traveled the world a bit, lived in Europe for about 2 years, went in the Air Force for about 4, became an IT engineer, and then got into real estate after that, launched a business with my brother. And we've been partnering with people for about 4 years, buying real estate and investing together. I don't think we've done a single deal by ourselves. So we're big on partnerships.
So guys, how did you get into real estate?
That's a great question. Our paths intersected at this special time in 2018. I'll let Cris tell his story, but essentially I was 2 years out from getting retirement and I was looking at not getting another job. I didn't want to have to get another job. And so 2 years prior to that, somebody had actually talked about owning rental properties, and I'd written down everything they said. They talked about bigger pockets. They talked about cash flow and appreciation, and it just clicked. So when Christopher came to me in 2018 with this idea, we were off to the races. But I'll let him tell his story.
A long commute time mainly was the driver for me, the initiator. So I had a 45-minute commute time working as an IT engineer. Made really good money, but just listening to these stories on multiple podcasts on trying to be productive in that commute. I don't know how I got turned into a certain podcast, but of course, Bigger Pockets was somewhere in there. And I just heard all these people doing some building wealth. And it seems so easy that I figured, what am I doing trying to put 10% away in my 401k? And in 2018, actually, there was a pullback in the stock market. Coincidentally enough, because they actually rose interest rates, the Fed rate, they raised it in 2018, but pulled back because it stifled the economy. So that was actually my driving force, was seeing the 401ks dip and then hearing all these stories from others that were doing the same.
Awesome. Hey, so jumping into that real estate, both of you getting out of the Air Force, having different reasons for wanting to increase your generational wealth. Let's go over, was your first deal together or separate?
Together. Yep.
Great.
It was a 4-unit, 2 duplexes right next to each other. And I don't know how much detail you want to get into it, but it was a dump. I think only one was livable. But according to all the podcasts, that was a deal. So if we could add value and rent it out and refinance it, then we would have a cash flowing asset on our hands, the first of many. That was the idea anyway. And we brought in a partner and he funded about 70% of the purchase price. We did the rest. I think we liquidated our IRAs. We pulled out HELOCs to do everything. But 4 or 6 months later, I think we refinanced and pulled the capital out, paid the investor back. And we were making an extra, $300 a month.
Maybe a little less. It wasn't too much.
Maybe a little less.
Yeah. But that's okay.
Which was a lesson. It was a lesson, right?
Now, just out of curiosity, how did you get into that? What was the purchase price? And then how much was the rehab?
It was $209,000 for a quad necessarily. There's 2 duplexes built in the 1940s. So they were old, run down, stinky. Yeah. And then we spent about close to $90,000 in renovations. And we estimated 40, but it climbed pretty quickly. And then you got holding costs and all that stuff you don't really learn until you borrow money from multiple sources over time. But really cool project, because when it did exit, when it was finally complete, let me see, 209, it was 480 was the final appraisal for all of them. So about 240%. And it was end of 2018. So we haven't had the huge market run up at that point. It was still running up, but you could say 2021 and 2020 were these big booms. So we were just happy to get that kind of appraisal.
That's awesome. Still got it, or did you part ways with it?
Parted ways with it. And this is something that I'll tell you, just because something appraises high doesn't mean it cash flows. And then just because something appraises high doesn't seem the next person will pay that price. And what that means to uncomplicate that is if you don't sell at the appraisal, then what good is the appraisal? And if you don't take more money out because of a high appraisal as in the bank will finance and it still cash flows, then what good's the high appraisal?
Right.
So we ended up selling actually for around 380, I believe. So a little less than what we were appraised at. But there were some problems that started to appear later on the flooring because it's just an older property. And we did use some contractors that were cheaper in certain areas. And you learn with that experience.
But guys, listen, are you both in the Northwest? Cris, you up there too?
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So hot market, but I'm in New Jersey. So we have a lot of 1890 to 1920 homes. Nothing is square, nothing is plumb. And if you sit on a wagon on the floor, you'll go to the front door from the kitchen. So
that's
fully understand exactly what you guys are talking about. That's awesome.
Great.
Now, what's your current project? What do you currently have going on?
That's a great question. Those are the best questions, right? Some would say not enough. Some would say too much. It depends who you talk to. But we have a 224 unit right now that we're working on down in Houston, Texas. Strong market, strong cash flow. It's a value add play, amazing mortgage. We're able to assume a HUD loan under it because it's a green property. It's a energy efficient property.
Okay.
Most people hear HUD loan and they think, and the reason I say that is most people hear HUD loan, they think lower income, but this one's actually a green property and it falls into that category as well. So we got a 2.5 interest rate for a 30-year mortgage that we assumed from the seller. Not a home run yet, but it's a great mortgage to get in this climate.
It is.
So we're working on that. We're launching a $20 million fund. I think it's 20 million, Cris.
It's 15, but close to
15. Okay. We'll round up 50. It's $15 million fund. We're planning on investing across the Sun Belt. I don't know what number deal this is, but we generally do 2 to 4 a year. We're also in the luxury Airbnb space. So we just launched 2 of our luxury Airbnbs, and then we have another one that will go live in December. And these are all not syndications, but partner deals where we bring in private investors. And then what else? What else do we got going on?
I think it's our 17th deal.
17th. And we're also launching an Airbnb course for new investors, primarily for veterans, because we see how many veterans get out of the military and they're pushed into these jobs that they hate because they don't know what else to do. And running an Airbnb is a great way to add cash flow to your current status, to create that financial platform so you can actually pursue your passion now that you've retired or now that you've gotten out, whatever that may be, right? Adding anywhere from 50 to 100,000 in cash flow just from 1 to 2 Airbnbs is absolutely possible. And so we're launching a course this month, I think. So
yes. Yeah. Awesome. Well, make sure I get the link to that so that I can push that out with this, because, I'd love to send people your way. Obviously, we're all vets. We all understand what it is to come out of the military, how daunting a task it is to make that transition. Mm-hmm. Anything that we can do to help anyone who's making that transition a little bit easier is fantastic. So I'd love to help you guys out with that at some point.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just want to caveat that too. And that's where I was going with that 4 unit. We thought we knocked it out of the park, but then you start getting the monthly cash flow and you're like, $300 a month's not going to change my life. You know what I mean?
Especially when you split it with 2 families.
Not in America anyway. So that's where this came from. We were looking for that, how to change our lives with real estate. And it took us about 3 years to figure this out. But I think the hack is getting a great place to start with cash flow is an Airbnb. And so if there's certain wickets you got to hit to make it profitable, but it's a great way to set yourself up for success as you leave an older job or whatever.
Absolutely. And this is a great segue from the last podcast that we did, because we had Kimmy Crombie on, who is a short-term rental person. That's what her niche is. So this is a great follow-up to that. If anyone who's watching has any questions or listening has any questions about that, please check it out. It's in the guys. We'll make sure that all of the education platform and the upcoming podcast. Let's talk about that a little bit. That's on the horizon, right?
We actually launched the podcast back in February.
Okay.
But one of the things we did wrong, this is wrong or right or indifferent, whatever, you live and you learn, but I tend to, as the visionary, launch things without preparation. And we probably didn't market it off the bat, honestly. Okay. But it's called The Art of Winning. And we've had, 35 for maybe 40 podcasts so far. Every week on Tuesday, they go out. So we talk about everything from health, wealth, and happiness, from building wealth. So it's not just real estate, to also building life-changing health, to the mindset and happiness that goes into building the life that you want to live. So that's been a lot of fun. You get to talk to some amazing people on there.
Terrific. And once again, check the show notes. That'll be down in there as well. We'll make sure that goes out. Guys, as you became more and more successful, what is one thing that you learned as your wealth increased?
That's a good question. One thing we learned the best, and it's not the one thing you learn as your wealth increased. It was actually the one thing that we learned that helped our wealth increase.
Okay.
And I would say it was a great book to read is Who Not How. And before we even read that book, we realized that because when you do your first deal or when you're starting to do this, actually, when you start to do anything, it's the first hurdle is the capital to start it. And so that's where people usually get stuck and either give up or go do something else, whatever. And then the other thing is they get the capital and they try to do everything that goes into it. In a syndication, in a large deal, even in small deals, it just does not make sense to do everything. You need to be a leader and then have other people, experts, obviously, doing the things that they're good at. Because if you're trying to go out and learn every single job, which initially we did try to do. I went to the work site times every week. And I'm like, I'm supposed to manage these contractors? I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm looking for. You know what I mean?
Right.
But really leveraging find out what you're good at and then find other people that are good at the other pieces, whether that's capital raising, whether that's finding deals, closing deals, underwriting them. It's the same thing with anything else. You hire an insurance company to take care of your insurance. You don't go do that yourself, right? You got to look at these other jobs the same way.
Another book I'll throw out there that, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. You guys, do you limit the number of people that you have directly in your chain? How far down did you delegate? What's your organization now?
And we've explored different scenarios. We were big on traction as well. The book, Gino Wickman, which is great to build a business. But I think you'll find what aligns for your business and for you. And we have been exploring different scenarios. We're about 9 now, including our family, including the 4 people who started it. So we have 2 people based in the US, and then we have 3 based in the Philippines.
Okay.
And we have an organizational management chart. So each one of us, the top 4, has probably 1 to 2 or 3 maybe under them. And so we do a weekly leadership meeting every week, and we ask, how are your people? How is everyone doing? And so it's responsible on those leaders at the top to be meeting with their people every week and ensure that the objectives are filtering down from the leadership all the way down to anyone in that kind of respective area. It's big. It's important to stay within your lane and then have that all funnel up to some kind of objective that you're all working towards. So.
Great point. Great. I'm a big fan of the EOS model and the rocks, and we do the same thing. We run exactly the same way. It's definitely a pattern for success. We're pushing out a bunch of free information right now, which is awesome. So let's go into the soaring forward. These are things that if someone's just starting out, we can help them achieve heights. So these are 4 questions that I ask every guest. First and foremost, what's something that you use to keep you motivated?
I love that one. Okay. So I think clarity is the key to success, and you have to know what you want out of life, right? And for motivation, it's reviewing your vision. Where are you going in life? Is what you're doing right now leading you to where you want to go? And 9 times out of 10 for people, it's not, right? They have this job and they're okay, I'm going to work at this job until retirement and then I'll be free. And is that really what you want right now? What do you want out of life? And writing that down over and over, or journaling and exploring that is motivation in itself. And you get into this mode of exploring, what do I really want? And then, is that possible? And how can I make that possible? Who do I need to talk to make that possible? And next thing, you're moving to Costa Rica with your wife and family so that you can teach your daughters to surf and they can learn Spanish. And that's where I'm going next year. But that's what I'm saying. You get into that flow, and all of a sudden these possibilities. Why limit yourself, right? You have all this potential, but if you don't actually ask yourself what your potential is, you'll never know. You'll never even take that action.
Awesome. Cris, what keeps you motivated, man?
It's a constant thing. I'm down in the weeds a lot of times, so I have to really get that motivation back a lot. I turn to books, I turn to podcasts, and I even joined GoBundance of lately because motivation dies off, and I think you need to reevaluate. You need to do your goals constantly. We do goals a lot. I do a lot of business goals, and I forget the personal ones a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to surround myself with other people who are ambitious and successful and pushing me to those new heights, because I forget myself. And I use books and I use podcasts and I use my network to do that. Man. And of course, having Ashton as a brother is very helpful. As you can see, he's very good at that.
But I'm very bad at the documenting and the processes and the detail stuff. So it goes both ways. We feed into each other.
We talk about that visionary versus integrator and how they work together to create a cohesive team so that you can progress. That's awesome, man. That's fantastic. I'll take it back, Cris. We were just talking about as far as coaching. I coached ice hockey for over 20 years. I can motivate the living hell out of my guys, but it lasts maybe 30 seconds into the first shift. And then their legs start getting tired. They better be disciplined and self-motivated. Otherwise it's over. A great point. So guys, one thing that you learned during your transition or that completely changed your mindset or even before your transition?
You mean the transition from the military into,
or as you were progressing through your growth in the real estate industry? I'll leave it up to you guys. If you want to talk about one thing that you learned when you transitioned from the military until your current state, or even within your business and your growth over the last few years.
Really, I learned a lot about myself, and that's where it starts, right? You have all this future ahead of you. You don't know what it is. You have all this potential that you haven't tapped into yet. But when you start doing new things, you start exploring your capabilities, right? It's when you're climbing a mountain, you get so far, and then all of a sudden, I could probably go a little bit further, and I could go, and then you get there, and I could go a little bit further. And it's that self-discovery and that creation, that building that you learn about yourself, and it becomes this fun. It becomes fun, right? And it's inspiring. You continue to look ahead, and when you get into that model. And there's some great studies on this, people that are forward thinking versus present thinking, or growth mindset versus static mindset. When you get into that growth mindset, it just snowballs and it just continues. Like, imagine when we did our first deal, Christopher and I never thought about making a company out of it. We never thought about doing a coaching program. We never thought we could make $400,000 to $500,000 a year off of real estate. That never even occurred to us. You don't conceive of that. But once you start taking that action, you get that feedback, and that feedback leads into more clarity of what you want. It leads into more commitment for the future, for that goal. And then you just take bigger and bigger steps and bigger, massive action as you get more committed, as you get more clear. And it's just this flywheel of success, but it also goes the other way. And so if you're not careful and you start down that road of, I don't know how to do it, I don't have enough money, other people are successful, they're way better than me. You have these these critical thoughts in your mind that slow you down, and it goes the other direction. And now you're going backwards or staying static. Yeah. And I think that self-discovery of capability, of potential, of exploring, that has been so much fun to explore.
Was there one light bulb moment that pushed you? Was there a false peak that you might have reached where you were, oh crap, there's more mountain to climb? Was there one or more light bulb moments that really flipped that switch for you?
That's a good question. I think that first deal, you listen to all those podcasts and you're like, we're going to be financially free and we're going to travel the world. And you do that first deal and it's less than $300 a month. And you're like, we need to do something different. What do we do different? How do we scale? How do we go bigger? How many, because you do that, you try to get that number. How many deals do I need to do to actually reach the number that I need per month, per week, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's when you have that kind of revelation. There's got to be an easier way, right?
Cris, was there one moment in time that you can put a pin on and say, oh, my light bulb moment was?
We're always learning. I think I just listened to the podcast with Brian Lubin and Ashton. It was a really good one. They talked a lot about the journey and climbing the mountain, and then you see the next highest point, your next goal, your next objective. I think the minute you just get satisfied with being at the peak, you get complacent and you get unhappy and you lose interest and all sorts of stuff happens. So you are always chasing the next peak. For me, I guess a light bulb moment, it was probably our first syndication that we completed was, we actually achieved a lot out of that. I can't believe we did it. There's a lot along the way, and I feel I have a lot of knowledge in this space now, but I also feel there's so much more to learn. And so it's constant light bulbs, whether it's from hiring, whether it's from doing different deals or asset types or creating a course. I filmed the whole course myself. And that was a light bulb on what it's to build a course in 4 different locations with the little lights and all that stuff.
What tools do you use to keep you on track?
The traction model has been absolutely crucial. I can't remember what time or what year we jumped into that, but when we did, you could call that one of the light bulb moments where I remember reading it and immediately calling Christopher or texting him or something like, hey, we need to check this book out and I think we should incorporate it. And I don't know if we could have worked as partners let alone bring our wives in as partners, because they both work, I'm not going to say for us, but work with us. And we've hired them as W-2 earners. They've retired from their job. But the structure that Traction has given us and the guidance in executing with that structure has been absolutely crucial to our business and our flow. So I think that was one of the biggest tools, because he outlines everything from goal setting to your 90-day sprint, obviously, but as well as responsibilities, who's in charge of what type of personality should be in charge of things, which is a huge one, right? Because initially, Christopher and I just thought we were double tapping everything. He'd underwrite a deal, then I'd underwrite a deal, then he'd call a lender and I would call a lender. And it's like, who's doing what? We were all doing the same thing. It was a mess.
The big thing for the military guys too is this goes back to that transition period, you're very used to structure and you're very used to things being told or what to do in certain scenarios. And you just sit back and you go with the flow. And when you step out, even as a civilian in a civilian job, and I worked 12 years in IT, and it's just a total different world. You're on your own. There isn't structure. And sometimes the leaders are not really good leaders. And they don't even have structure. Of course, sometimes we don't have good leaders in the military, but at least everyone leans on the structure to a degree. A big part of it and your success coming out, but also is using the tools at hand that make whatever goal you're trying to do easier. I could talk about all the different technical tools we use and softwares and all that, but it's more finding the structure or finding the expert that has the structure to give you that structure back to make your goal easier. If you're just bobbing and weaving to get to your goal, you'll get there eventually, but it's going to be a lot longer and you might lose steam along the way and give up. Finding those books, finding those mentors, finding those support systems that enable you to get there easier and with a structured path can be key.
We talk about it all the time when we're in consulting about the difference between being busy and being productive. You can be busy 24/7, not sleeping at all, and then nothing's happening and you're wondering why. And it's because you're focusing all of your energy in the exact wrong place. Just a quick question about that. Now, did you guys, I know that they offer a program. Did you guys reach out to the EOS folks and actually have them consult you, or did you guys just take that, define it, and run with it yourselves?
So both Christopher and I are both very resilient, independent in the sense that we often don't reach out for help. And that's probably a failing point, honestly. So initially, we just ran with the book, right? And everything we could find online about it.
Yeah.
I reached out to a couple coaches, and I think it took us a year to actually end up getting a business coach. But because you play that game of we're entrepreneurs, we're trying to replace our W-2, and they want $10,000 a month. Well, I don't remember. It was a lot. It felt a lot at the beginning. And we're like, can we just figure it out? We'll just figure it out.
So we did a lot of meetings where I'm just sitting there flipping to chapter 3, trying to figure it out.
It's your startup. You may not have the amount of income that you need to support the business and the structure itself. And someone asks you, hey, then I've come to the conclusion that at some point you have to start to say, how much? 10,000? Is that you've got to start to come to that mindset, because it's, at some point that 10,000 might bring you in 100,000 a month.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
That's true. That's true. I'll counter that though. As a business, and I make a lot of the funding decisions, is, what if you could hire someone for 10,000 a year that could bring you in 200,000? So you have to it's constant weighing of options. Is the training doing it? Or would hiring someone do it, or we're buying the software? Now you're a business once you start to think that. And that's where it gets, you take those gambles. We've dumped near 40 to 50,000 in training materials this year in expert information or expert consulting and stuff like that. And that's a big chunk. And you're like, we'll see. It's going to be worth it if we make it worth it.
One of the books that actually helped us get our finances correct. You think it's all income and expenses, right? When you're starting, income and expenses, great. The book Profit First was a game changer, right? Because when you're starting in the beginning, you don't know how to pay yourself, let alone what that incorporates. Versus, is that an expense, or is that actually profit, or putting CapEx aside, or insurance and taxes before you take a profit? Which do you do first? What should you do first? And that was that was a big piece for us. We used that and we implemented that as well. So people starting out, I think that's a great book to look at. Traction and then Profit First.
I actually have in the show notes beyond your books, I have a Profit First coach, and that's what I use for that. Michael Mikalovich, fantastic book. All of my companies are structured the exact same way as far as that process is concerned. It helps you not only organize yourself, realize that you need to be able to take a profit and some owner's pay, but you also need to be able to see the trends and the way things are working. And if you're following that model, it makes it a lot easier. And guys, last of the 4 questions is, if you had to start all over, what would you change?
I think Cris are going to be on the board with us too. This has shifted a lot. I think if you asked me 2 years ago, I would say I would have jumped straight into syndications. But knowing what I know now about syndications and having to start in syndications, there's not a lot of cash flow in a syndication. If you're a GP and you're trying to raise capital, do the deal, all that stuff, because the cash flow typically goes to the limited partners, which if you're looking to invest passively and you have the capital, go invest as a limited partner in these deals because it's great returns. But the people putting the deals together, they may get a acquisition fee, but then after that, there's not a lot of cash flow until the sale, which could take 3 to 5 years. So if we were to start out, I think I would focus on a higher cash flow model. And that would be something, a Airbnb model or a short-term rental or a mid-term rental in a market that has a lot of transient personnel where I can add value really quickly, refinance, pull my capital out, and then do it again. And now I have a cash flowing property and I'm using the same amount of capital to buy 1, 2, 3 of those, manage it all myself or ourselves, and spend only 1 to 2 hours doing that per day because you have all these apps and automations that you can do that. And we teach all this in the course. And then you can start focusing on the generational wealth, decreasing your taxable income, getting all that stuff, because that's your financial footprint, your financial platform that'll springboard you into massive wealth, right? Because you have to have that monthly cash flow.
That's very valid. It's been a big lesson for our business. We've done close to 5 syndications now. We've exited 3 or 4 of them, or 3 of them. And we've done a bunch of small multifamily, and we've done 5 vacation rentals at this point. But when you have a business, cash flow is king. And if you aren't making cash flow, you don't pay people, or you can't even pay yourself halfway. I didn't get paid for 4 years. I just started taking a salary in March, and Ashton works for free. Now we're finally starting to pay and take those profits as owners and that kind of thing. And we didn't for a long time, mostly because we didn't really have cash flow. And I think that's big. If you're starting your own business, or if you want to add income, you need to add income. So don't start something that's not really producing income necessarily, unless you have another form of income that you can ride out for a while. And so if you're in the military, or if you have a W-2 job, you could possibly do that and have a side hustle that you got to build up that brand and credibility. We did for 4 years. But if you're in it for income and you're in it for cash flow and you want to grow that horizontal income, you want some other passive streams of income, make sure you recognize that goal aligns with whatever efforts you're doing, whatever business you're doing. And that was probably one thing we didn't really do because we didn't understand syndication necessarily. And we still do syndication. We love syndication for a bunch of reasons. But I would say it's very difficult for someone starting out to make income from the start. Just recognize that.
I've learned a lot. That's fantastic. I really appreciate you both jumping on here with me. And I thank you very much for your time. I know you guys are very busy. How can somebody reach out to you if they want to make contact with you?
The easiest way is valkyriegroup.com, VALKERE group.com. We're on social media too. So if you type Valkyrie anywhere, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, you're going to find us, and you can reach out on those as well. But the links are all on the website as well. So that's probably a direct one source.
It's all going to be in the show notes anyway, but I really appreciate your time. Look these guys up. They're both fantastic. They're all over social media. Check them out. You want to learn? These are the guys to do it from. Until the next time, aim high,